In my experience, most dealers don't have their thinking big enough. They're thinking about how to go from, we normally sell 20 cars. How can we get to 25 or 30? They need to be asking themselves how they can go from 20 to 50 and from 50 to 100. We got to get our thinking up. It can be done. I see it all the time. Look, I'm gonna give it all away. I'm gonna go through every single thing you need to do to be able to put together an operating system so that you can deploy it in your small business, in your dealership, and unfold all this and put together a strategic plan. You got to make sure you're not shooting too narrow. You need to scare yourself. And it's going to be great because when we get done and at the end of this video, you're going to see how all this stuff is actually more realistic, and it's hard to really show you now. But as we unpack it, I'll, bow tie this whole talk with how realistic can you do this thing in bite size when it's reverse engineered. I'm excited to share that with you. It's been my experience working with dealers all over the country, both franchise and independents, that the game plan, the growth plan, the overall overarching vision and the strategy, that's the responsibility of the dealer, the owner, is just not always well thought through. The idea of growth is the owner coming in at the beginning of a new month, side huddling up with the general manager, the GSM, or the sales manager, talking about what they did as far as sales numbers in units, and that's important. We'll circle back to that. But they'll communicate about how many cars did we sell last month? What are we going to do this month? And we might think about things like, well, it's December, so maybe the last week of December will be awesome. But what's the plan? Like, not only what's the plan, but what's the growth plan? Because our goal shouldn't be just to do what we did last month. We did 100 last month. Maybe we can get to 110 this month. And what I see time and time again is there's a lack of communication between the dealer and the general manager or the GM and the sales manager. And what the result is you have a sales manager in a meeting with the sales team at the beginning of the month that takes out a Sharpie or a dry erase marker and will go over to the whiteboard, and everyone's got their name listed on the dry erase board. And they start rattling off, Joe, what are you going to do this month? Last month you did 10. Oh, you're going to do 15 this month? Great. And they'll mark down 15. Susie, what are you going to do this month? Last month you did 8. Let's just get you to 8 again so you can keep your job. We'll make 8 the goal. What about 10? Tim, you did 20 last month. Great job, Tim. Everybody's excited about 10. And when you total up all the goals of this non-data driven, non-goal directed, no one-on-one, no plan, no strategic plan, and you total these numbers up, we're going to have a record month. We normally do 100, and this month we're going to do 150. If everybody can just stay on target, you won't do 150. You'll do 100. You can't do 150, and there's many reasons why. But in this video specifically, we want to talk about developing that plan so that you can grow. What is the long-term strategic plan to grow? And then what tools and resources do you have to give to yourself and your team to hit those targets? Different dealers have different goals. Your goal may be to go from to double your sales or triple your sales. But some dealers are happy with their volume and they just want to do more profitability. This works either way. Whether you're trying to increase units or increase volume, and I assume you wouldn't be watching this if you weren't wanting to increase something. And oh, by the way, if you're not wanting to increase something, you don't need to watch the rest of this video because we're talking about growth, right? So most of the time in the car business, it's measured in units. Units are not always the best measuring stick because you can sell a lot of cars and not hold any gross. You sell 120 cars and you're not making any profit. You're doing a whole lot of work and paying a whole lot of people and running around real busy, putting out fires all day for no reward. And so how do we either generate more profit or generate more units? And implementing an operating system in your dealership, and there's multiple operating systems out there. There's things like Scale Up, Scale It, Scaling Up, there's Traction, and a myriad of others. We've used Traction in a lot of stores or hybrids of Traction, and it's been very successful. And so in this video, I'm going to walk through something like a Traction hybrid, but you could use it and apply any other operating system in your dealership as long as you have some type of operating system for your business. If you don't have an operating system for your business, then it's going to generate a result that's by default and not one that's been specifically and surgically created and designed by you. I'd rather have a business I'm designing the outcome as opposed to where I come to work very hard every day, and I just get a defaulted outcome. And by the way, we're a multi-million-dollar business. I'm not in the car business. I'm not a car dealer. I used to be. And we use a traction hybrid in my business, and it works very well. So, I suppose even if you're not a dealer and you own a business and you're looking to scale your business, this is very applicable to any type of businesses you have. But specifically for the dealership, having an operating system that can put together a strategic plan that gives you and your team step-by-step growth milestones that you can actually achieve and accomplish is way, way more profitable, way more resourceful for you and your time and your dollars and your team than just having a default outcome. You're killing so many birds with one stone. And one of them is very difficult, leadership and management, holding people accountable. How do we do that? And it's very different than the processes and the people in the dealership. And by having an operating system that you can design and create and a goal to move towards also allows you to communicate this to your team and get their buy-in, especially your key leaders, and disseminate it on down through your personnel so that everybody has a very clear picture of what the vision is. We're going to charge that mountain. We're going to that mountaintop. There's many mountains out there. We're going to that one. We're going to plant a red flag on the top of it, and we're going to get there just as expeditiously as we can. But everybody knows where we're going at this point. We're going to that mountain. We're not going to anywhere else. We're not looking behind us to the side. We're all marching that way, and it's really clear throughout the team. And so it's easier for me to have in black and white, this is the plan. This is what we're here to do. This is the purpose. This is where we're heading. There's a great story, I believe it was by Dave Ramsey in EntreLeadership in his book, but he talked about hiring a bunch of laborers for a day and giving them all shovels. And he said, I'm going to pay you $30 for today. I want you to dig a hole. And so for 8 hours, you have 30 people that are digging holes. When they're done at the end of the shift, they dug all day long. They dug a hole, and they come back to the owner and they say, hey, we're done. And he says, great, listen, tomorrow I'm going to pay you $40 if you'll come dig a hole for another 8 hours. Actually, it was filling the first hole. So now you got all these people filling the first hole. And he said, look, if you'll come back tomorrow, I'm going to pay you $50 and we're going to dig a hole. And so the next day, half of those people from day 2 returned. And he said, we're going to dig the same hole that we just filled in. And so they dig out the hole. At the end of the day, they come up, they get paid. And he said, listen, tomorrow if you'll come back, I'm going to pay you $50, and I want you to fill the hole in again. And someone says, whoa, what are we doing here? And he continues to lose laborers every single day. And so finally somebody says, why are we doing this? What's the purpose? Like, why are we digging a hole and then filling it in? And the owner says, well, listen, I'm paying you. What difference does it make? But it does make a difference. People want a vision. They want to get behind a leader. They want to know we're going to that mountain. We're going to plant a red flag at the top of that mountain. And when people understand the purpose and the forecast and vision, they get motivated and inspired, and they know they all are going that direction together as a team. And it's pivotal in order to get the whole team to row in the same direction. The starting place, and it sounds a bit cliche, it sounds a bit boring, it sounds like unnecessary, is really uncovering what your core values are. And I used to think, what does that even mean? And what relevance does it have in my business, like knowing my core values? And isn't it just selecting a whole bunch of words that everybody else selects? Like, we want to be people of high integrity that work real hard, and we're servant attitudes. And then it's forgotten. And it's like, why do we just invest all this time going over and identifying what our core values are? What's the point? What's the purpose of identifying your core values? And what I've come to learn working with so many dealers across the country is when you invest in understanding and setting up what your core values are with your key leadership team, it really benefits you mainly in the hiring, the terminating, and the rewarding processes. And what I mean by that is when I'm hiring somebody, I'm looking at my core values. Does this person support the core values that this team has here at the dealership? And will they support this team that we're working with? Nick Sabian said it best. He said, look, C players can't play with A players. A players can't work with C players. And I think core values is similar. If your team's core values are things like honesty, integrity, and transparency, and you're interviewing somebody, even a key player, could be a non-key player, and they don't hold that core value of honesty, integrity, and transparency, they're not going to fit in to your culture. They're not going to treat customers the way you want them to be treated. Hey, they're not even going to treat the other fellow co-peers, the staff, with each other internally the way that you want to design your culture. And, we're going to talk more about this, but as the owner, you set the vision, you maintain the key relationships in the dealership, but you also create the culture. What kind of culture do you want to build at your dealership? What kind of culture do you want to build that comes from you and who you are? What kind of culture, what kind of values do you want to have inside the team that you build? And then ultimately, what is that going to do for your customer base? Hopefully a lifetime customer base buying cars and servicing their vehicles at your dealership. And so core values helps you put your finger on the type of culture that you're going to build. And this is instrumental to a leader. This is instrumental to an owner to identify who it is that you're looking for to bring on this team as far as attitude, aptitude, and skill set and experience. It's a key ingredient. Now, listen, you may have 5 core values at your dealership, and you sift through those 5 and you identify which one of these are core non-negotiables to hire and which ones are not. And I'll give you an example. I was recently doing a quarterly planning meeting with a dealership, a client of mine, and one of their core values was creativity. Another one was honesty and integrity. And they decided that in order to work at that dealership, you had to be honest and you had to be a person of character and integrity, or you couldn't work there, period. But creativity doesn't necessarily have to be a characteristic that every single person on the team at the dealership had to have. This would be like a nice to have or a want to. So you can go through your core values, let's say you have 4 or 5, and identify which is a characteristic that somebody has to have to work here, and which would be nice that we're shooting for, but it's not necessarily a non-negotiable. The one other thing I would add about core values is something that Traction actually introduced to me anyway, and it's called GWC. It's a Traction acronym for get it, want it, have the capacity to do it. What does that mean? Well, these are 3 non-negotiables in order to work on your team at your dealership. In order to work on my team and my business, you have to get it. And I think we know what I mean is like, some people get it and some people don't get it. And you have to get it to be able to work at the dealership. Number 2, you have to want it. You have to have the self-motivation and the drive to want to do a great job, to want to put your best foot forward, to want to be a representative of the brand in the dealership. You have to want it. You have to want and have some ambition to do your job successfully. And last, of course, you have to have the capacity, the ability, the capability to do the job that you're being hired to do. So do you get it? Do you want it? And do you have the capacity to do it? If a team member doesn't get it, if a team member doesn't want it, or a team member doesn't have the capacity to do their job, they either need to be put in a different seat at the dealership if they're the right person, or they don't belong on the team. If you think through the people that did work, and we have the best failure stories in the dealership world. I mean, the stories that I've heard about people that were hired on, people sleeping in cars on a Saturday because they were out all night and, with a car running way on the back 40 of the lot, all kinds of, crazy stories that we have with team members. What is it about them, their characteristics or these non-negotiables, could you put your finger on that would have been an indicator or a red flag that maybe they weren't a right fit? Maybe they weren't very honest. Maybe they showed examples of dishonesty or non-transparency. Maybe it was really evident to you that they didn't get it. They didn't get anything. They didn't understand what any of the team was trying to do. And you'll see these red flags as you become more familiar with these core values. These are the reasons why it's important to start with core values. It really is the starting place for everything else that we're going to unfold as far as putting together a long-term forecast and a growth strategy that will work for your dealership. It all starts, ironically, with core values. Also, if you're struggling with trying to figure out this whole core value conversation, and you haven't read the book Traction, you can get it on Amazon. It's a great read. It's by Gino Wickman. That's Gino Wickman. Gino Wickman was the author, and you could read through those chapters on core values. It's a great resource to kind of solidify or fill in the gap on how to set and create core values in your dealership. Once these core values are identified, next it's time to move into a 5 or a 10-year ultimate vision. I actually was on a podcast one time in the automotive industry, and the host, the facilitator of the podcast, I was talking about a 10-year vision, and he was a dealer, and he looked at me like a deer in the headlights, like he was so puzzled that we could actually look out 10 years and have any idea what the world or the industry or the business might look like in 10 years. And there's a lot to that. I mean, perhaps a 5-year target is better. We're going to that mountain. We're going to plant a flag on top of it. If it's going to take us 10 years to get there, so much may change in the automotive industry and in your business. It's just too far out. So I recommend a 5-year or a 10-year. Now, my business is to do a 10-year target. We know exactly what that is. The whole team knows what our target is to do in 10 years. And what does that mean, a 10-year target? Well, it means a lot of things. What does your dealership look like in 10 years? What's the revenue? What's the gross profit? How many units will you be selling? How many rooftops will you have? If you're an independent, will you have moved into franchise? If you're a franchise, will you have moved into independent retail? Have you ever considered buy here, pay here, lease here, pay here, renting cars? What does this thing look like 10 years or 5 years from now? And I got to tell you, I ask a lot of dealers this question, and it's a lot of deer in the headlights. It's a lot of, I'm not real sure. It's hard work. It's kind of like trying to write out a job description before you actually interview somebody. To do this properly, to really be able to say, we're going to that mountain, I've got to pick that mountain from all the other mountains. I got a 360 view here and I can go anywhere in the world. Well, I'm the leader. I'm the dealer. I got to determine where this team is going. You need a picture of what that looks like. And, it may take a deep cup of coffee, big cup of coffee, 20, 30 an hour, 2 hours, multiple different takes, coming back to a white paper that you're drafting ideas for you to really come up with what does this thing look like 5 years or 10 years down the road. Without that, nothing else is possible. Otherwise, everything is by default. We need an end game so we can reverse engineer the entire plan to get there. But if we don't know where we're going, if you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. And so it's better to decide where you're going to go, even though it's challenging. It's not easy. It's difficult, but it's the starting place. Starting with the end in mind is the beginning. I've seen dealers work for 15 years and be successful and some not successful and never really sit down and say, what does this thing look like 5 years from now? What does this thing look like a year from now? And we start with the end because we can get someplace if we know where we're going. Let me offer you an analogy. You're the dealer, you're the owner, you're the captain of the ship, you're the pilot. So let's assume you're going to pilot your team on a little trip. And you put them in an airplane, they've got a full cabin, you got 100 team members and they're in the cabin, and you take off, you level off at 32,000 feet, and you come over the intercom and you say, hey, everybody, sit back and enjoy the ride. We're leveling off at our top altitude of 32,000 feet. I do have good news and I have bad news. The bad news is we've lost all of our electrical equipment. All of our readings, I don't have any of them. We don't know. Our GPS is out. I don't know which way we're going. I don't know if we're going north, east, west, or south. We actually don't know if we're going vertically up or down. That's not good. The other bad news is I don't know how much fuel we have in the tank. But the good news is we're making great time. What does that mean? Think about your cabin team members and what they're freaking out. What do you mean? You don't know if we're going up or down or if we're going in the right direction. Your team doesn't even know where the plane is supposed to go. They're just trusting that you do. And now that you've lost all readings on all your equipment, you have no idea where you're going. You just know that you're working in the chaos so hard every day. Everybody's working real hard. All kinds of fires to put out. All kinds of busy work. Paper flying everywhere. Customers everywhere. But we don't know where we're going. We don't know how much fuel we have. All we know is we're going real fast. And I think that's a great analogy to not having an operating system, not having a strategic plan to your business doesn't give the destination and what it's going to take to get there. Now, and you'll see, we'll start to reverse engineer how are we going to get there. I want you to think about this in terms of, like, I used to be in the military, and sometimes we'd run exercises, land nav exercises, where in the Army, they would just drop us in the middle of a forest with a map and a compass. And our goal was to get to a specific place using the sun and a compass and all these different features and landmarks. And of course, I'm by myself. I'm trying to figure out how to get from point A to point B, where you are today, to the top of that mountain with your team. I'm trying to figure out how to get there the quickest because I'm competitive. And if you own a dealership, you probably are too. So how am I going to get from where I am, lost in the woods, to this point where I got to get as quickly as possible? This is the same way we're going to reverse engineer your 10-year plan. So we're headed there. You and your team, we're headed to the top of that mountain with a red stake in it. How do we get there the quickest? it starts by breaking it down into time. We're going to break down the time. We're going to break down the measurables. So, if you're currently a $10 million business and you want to be a $100 million dealership, what are we going to do in the next 3 years? Watch this. If we get there, if we can get to this place in 3 years with measurables and the infrastructure, if we can be here at this waypoint or milestone in 3 years, we are on track to get to the 10-year target. How many units do we need to be selling? How much revenue do we need to be generating? How much gross profit? Where does our service department need to be? It's not as easy as just taking your final measurables and dividing them by 3, because you can plan on accelerated growth towards the end of your plan. It's weighted. I mean, the more you grow, the more resource you have, the clearer the vision, the better the team. Everything is accelerating. The momentum is there. And so those first 3 years may be the hardest. And so you want to take that calculation, the wind, for example. You're a sniper and you're shooting. You got to take that wind factor in that the 3-year goal may not be dissected into 3 easy, even segments. It may be harder. It will be harder in the first 3 years. But once you get to that 3-year mark, expect to wait in some wind at your back. Then we move into the 1-year plan. And this is a really exciting place. The 1-year plan is, what's our plan in the next 12 months for us to be on track at the end of this year, the end of a calendar year? Of course, in my business and in your business, hopefully that's January to December. It's nice and clean. It doesn't have to be. You have a physical year, calendar year, however you want to do your planning. You set a date of when you're going to be at the 10-year. You set a date of when you're going to be at the 3-year. And then we construct a 1-year plan. Now, this is just complete reverse engineering. I'm simply taking my measurables from the 3-year plan, and I'm saying, what do I have to do in the next 12 months to be on track to hit that 3-year picture? So how many cars are we going to be selling? What's our revenue, sales? What's our gross profit look like? How many F&I managers? How many personnel are we going to need in each department? Will we need to add a department? Do we need to add a rooftop this year? Do we need to hire some people this year? What does it look like at the end of 12 months for us to be on track, if we are here at the end of 12 months, we're on track to hit our 3-year picture. We're simply reverse engineering the measurables. The 1-year plan is typically formulated each year in an annual meeting. These annual meetings are 2-day offsites as a best practice. Get out of your store, get out of your dealership, get out of your business, and take your senior leadership team. And don't worry, I'm going to talk about what the senior leadership team looks like. Take them offsite, rent a hotel room, go to a different town, take them to a nice resort if you can afford it. But get them, I've seen these in cheap winery conference rooms. I've seen them in 5-star resorts. I mean, just do something to get them out of the dealership so you're not distracted with interruptions. And, you want people to be focused. This is critical. You're really creating the game plan to win long term. And so, it's worth 2 days a year to get off site with your team, to avoid the distractions and really formulate and design what you're going to do over the next 1 year. It's the same agenda every year, and I'm going to put an annual agenda example down in the notes. You can go down there and click it, look at what I use for my business and for dealerships that I consult with, and you can just grab it as a resource. You can move it around, make it your own. Really, you can think about it like this. Day 1 is for looking at last year, and day 2 is forecasting next year. So on day 1, what are we going to do for a full day? Well, we're going to look at first our measurables. Did we hit our targets? Did we hit our quarterly goals for the 4th quarter? What was our percentage of achievement? Why didn't we hit the quarterly goals that we didn't hit? What was our overall team success? Did we hit the 1-year plan? Did we at least, and we're shooting for 80% achievement. If we didn't get 80% achievement, it's a failure. If we got 80% achievement, it's a win. So day 1, we're going to look at last year. What did the 4th quarter results look like? Let's look at, and I'm going to unpack this, don't worry, but what did our activities or our scorecards look like? Did we hit those? Were they good? What were our 4th quarter goals? Did we hit those? Were they good? Did we have 80% success rate? What problems do we have in the business and why we didn't? So we're just doing a complete reflection of last year to learn from it. Let me tell you something. You can learn as much from your achievements and your failures from last year than you can from just predicting what next year looks like without taking the time to look at what worked and what didn't work in the previous year. It's very difficult to roll into day 2 and say, hey, what can we draft from that? What can we learn from that as a team? to set up a solid forecast and projection for the next year. So now that we looked at the past and learned from it, now let's look forward and future. And again, in the description, I'll drop in a sample agenda for the annual that you could use. I'm looking in the future for, look, let's review with the senior leadership team what our core values are, what are our uniques in marketing, what are our quarterly goals for the next quarter, what's our new one-year plan, what's our scorecard activities. I'm going to unpack all this, don't worry. But I'm really casting the vision for this next 1 year with the team. What are some obstacles that we're going to have to overcome in order to get to the 1 year target? So I'm looking forward. I'm looking at the next year. I'm spending an entire day offsite with my key team, and we're going over things like quarterly targets, creating a 1 year plan, setting a scorecard of activities that if we do these activities, we will hit the mark in 1 year. All that's going to take 8 hours offsite for you to really create and construct a solid 1 year plan so that you can advance now in year 2, if you think about it, towards that 3 year picture. Now, I'm going to really push you here. I'm going to really challenge you here, because something that really needs to be created in your dealership, if you don't have one already, is something called an accountability chart. Now, an accountability chart looks and feels a lot like an organizational chart, but it's on steroids. Hey, let me tell you, if you don't have one, you need one. An accountability chart is where you build an org chart with what your operation, your dealership, or your small business looks like, and then what it's going to look like a year from now or 3 years from now. So I'm literally creating the bubbles, the departments, and I'm not only creating the positions on that chart with no names, by the way. We're not putting Sacred Cow Tim in the GM role because we have Tim on board. You create these bubbles, you create this accountability chart with no names. And I really want you to think about, what does your business need in the next year? And I want you to draft out an org chart for your dealership based on what the business needs, not who you have employed. So take all the names, put them on the shelf, and walk through, like, if we were properly structured, what positions would we have? And then here's what makes it not so much an org chart. An org chart basically is a bunch of bubbles with names in it and positions. An accountability chart has, beside each bubble, the top 3 to 5 responsibilities of that position. This can take quite a bit of time. I know when I did this in my own business, it took months with my senior leadership team to walk through and create this accountability chart with 3 to 5 responsibilities for each position. So you think about sales. What's the primary responsibilities of a salesperson on your team? Meet and greet customers, follow up, make X amount of phone calls, close, conversion rates. I mean, you have to think through each of these positions in your dealership and come up with what's important to you and your organization. So you create an outline, create a structure. Typically, I'll tell you, in like the traction model, for example, the very top bubble is the owner, and it's called the visionary. And the key responsibilities of a visionary is, first, LMA, leadership, management, and accountability, key relationships. And what are key relationships as the dealer? Managing the relationship with your floor plan, managing the relationships with your banker, managing the relationships with your lawyer, managing relationships with your CPA, primary vendors and marketing vendors that you're spending a bunch of money with, reinsurance and warranty providers. I mean, these are key relationships. So you're casting the vision. That's job responsibility number 1. We talked about that. Number 2, LMA, leadership, management, accountability. And LMA for who? For the people that work directly for you, and we'll get to that. But I'm also managing key relationships. I'm also in charge of designing and creating the culture that I want in my dealership. These are 4 or 5 key responsibilities that I, as the owner, have. Underneath the owner bubble, you'll typically have what's called an integrator in traction. This looks and feels a lot like a general manager in a large dealership. They're the chief of staff. What are their primary responsibilities? LMA, leadership, management, and accountability of the people that work for them, but also managing the staff, all the key department leaders, creating major processes and making sure those processes are working, creating new processes, working with key people to make sure your processes as your dealership are as efficient as possible. Then you would have a sales manager or GSM. Under the GSM, sales managers, F&I director, F&I manager, salespeople, so on and so forth throughout the departments, all working for the GM. accountability chart. It takes a little time. It takes a large pot of coffee to get through. It takes a little space. Hey, every once in a while, you need to close the door, get out a piece of paper, and think through your business. Work on your business and not in your business. And think through, what's the proper structure for the next year? What does an accountability and an org chart look like in our dealership? And what are the 3 to 5 primary responsibilities of each position? Now, not only do you need to know that as the owner, so you can make good decisions on growth and hiring and terminating and making sure the right people are in the right seats, but you also deserve to be able to communicate this clearly with your team. Everybody deserves one boss, not 4, not 5, but clearly, who do I work for? Who is my supervisor? And by having a clear accountability chart, it enables you to have a resource and a tool where you can easily communicate who everybody works for, what department they're in, what their responsibilities are. So having this clear accountability chart is not only good for your senior team, it's good for your entire staff. It also allows you to outline what these key responsibilities are. This is so helpful for things like drafting job descriptions, then drafting ads to recruit people for these positions. And last, I want to leave you with this on the accountability chart. The last thing you do once you have this thing built and constructed is start saying, oh, I have all these names on the shelf of people that are employed with me currently. Where do they go? Where does Joe fit in this? Well, he fits there. Where does Ann fit? Well, she fits there. Where does Suzanne fit? Well, Suzanne doesn't fit. So can we move her to a different role, or does she not have a seat on the bus? Are you employing some people that really can't fulfill primary responsibilities, that get it, that want it, that have the capacity to do it, that share your core values, and that can really produce and contribute to the team based on what your structure needs, not what you have? In my experience, when dealers actually go through this exercise, it's very painful. It's not easy. It's one of those things that Stephen Covey, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, says is very important and not urgent. If you notice, we spend a lot of our time in urgent, non-important quadrants or urgent and important quadrants, but most of the critical work in the development of our business, whatever small business you may have, is in that quadrant of important work that's not urgent. This is like the building and the team is not going to light up on fire if you don't get an accountability chart done today. But if you don't get an accountability chart done, how much of a ripple effect is that going to stifle your growth in the future? So I challenge you to really dig in on this point. Look at the description. I've given you an example of a dealership accountability chart for you to use. And then, of course, you may need to maneuver and make a hybrid for yourself. For years and decades, I've been consulting all over the country. And I've dealt with dealerships that, sell 15 cars a month with, husband-wife team, and that's it, all the way up to dealers selling 5,000 cars a month with 32 locations. It can be difficult no matter which one you are, trying to figure out who are my key people that I want to have in these meetings. Who do I want to take to a 2-day annual offsite? Who do I have at a 1-day quarterly? Who do I have in a weekly check-in meeting, which we're going to unpack all that. Don't overcomplicate it. The best rule of thumb to use for your key leadership team and who to include in these meetings are department heads. So, if you've got a salesperson, because you're a 3-person band, and they're the only person in sales, maybe they're on your team, your senior leadership team. If you've got one person in accounting you're outsourcing a lot of the accounting to ADP and a third-party payroll and maybe a CPA down the road, but they're just helping you with APAR, maybe they're on your leadership team. Look, just express to the leadership team, look, as we grow and scale, this team is going to evolve. If you're massive and you're the Titanic, this team is going to evolve. Take your best assertion of the people that you have to choose from on your team who can contribute creative, out-of-the-box ideas to support the growth of your dealership or your small business. Put them on the team. It's real easy if they're department heads. Tell everybody it's going to evolve and it's going to change, because I promise you it will, and go with it. Don't overcomplicate it. When I started traction in my business, from ground zero, and it took me 6 months to make $1. When I did make some money, I hired my first person on the team. We were a 2-person band on the traction team. We ran traction, and it was just her and I. We worked so closely together back then that it was a little odd to carve out 90 minutes for a meeting for her and I to sit down to go over a weekly check-in. But we did that. We committed to it. We were dedicated to it. Now we have 6 people on our senior leadership team, and it's growing and expanding and evolving. And some people have fallen off and some people have come on. So my key advice on this is don't overcomplicate it. Look for department heads or people that you have in different departments to represent the different departments in your dealership. Bring them together. Tell them it's going to change because it will as you grow, and then go from there. Quarterly targets are like to-dos, but they're going to take 1, 2, 3 months to accomplish. These are, hiring a new employee. I mean, that's not something you can knock out in the next 7 days. It's a key project that somebody needs to take control of and be accountable for that's going to take 2 or 3 months to do. And that's why we call these quarterly goals, quarterly targets. Traction calls them rocks. What's so cool is in the traction system anyway, and Scale Up's very similar. When you have a 1-year plan, remember that 1-year plan is driving to the 3-year picture, which is driving to the 10-year target. The 1-year plan is broken up into 4 quarters, of course. And so each quarter we're getting together and saying, like, what are the big projects that we need to accomplish this quarter to keep us on track to build towards the infrastructure of this 1-year plan? Because we're going to grow. And if we're going to grow, we're going to need to do stuff. We're going to need to hire people. We're going to need new policies. We're going to need new processes. We're going to need all kinds of things to be done. And so these are like big, hairy to-dos that can't be done in a week or in 10 days. They're going to take some time. They're going to take a month or 2 or 3 for you and your team to do them. Now, there's some rules I want you to think about with these quarterly targets or goals. Traction calls them rocks. Each rock needs to be assigned to a specific person. Somebody at the end of the day has to be accountable to the team, to your senior leadership team, to accomplish that quarterly rock, that quarterly goal, that project. If we're going to hire a title clerk in the dealership in the next quarter, then perhaps the controller needs to be responsible for making sure that gets done. Responsible to who? Responsible to the senior leadership team. You're all coming together for a weekly check-in. We're going to talk about that. But we're setting quarterly rocks, and each person on the senior leadership team should have anywhere between 3 to 7 of these quarterly targets or these quarterly rocks. 3 to 7. And remember, less is sometimes way more. With me and my team, I try to encourage everybody on the senior team to literally try to get it down to 3 or 4 primary things that they're trying to drive towards, projects to be completed in the next quarter. 7's a lot. That can be done. Now, why quarterly targets? Well, if you read the book, which is down in the description, Traction by Gino Wickman, he talks about 90 days sprints are a time frame that many individuals on the team can really understand. It's not too long to be like non-committal. It's so far out there, I don't really have to work on it today, but it's not short enough to where I can't really create some real large projects. So it's kind of a sweet spot. It's also nice to break up that 1-year plan into 4 quarters that everybody on the leadership team, everybody on my senior team has 3 or 4 things that we're going to advance aggressively towards that mountain. We're going to create projects. We're going to create processes. We're going to hire people. It could be many things in a dealership, and I give you lots of examples. And not to get too far advanced on you, but this is sometimes hard to really conceptualize, but there's a difference between company rocks and personal rocks, or company targets and personal targets. Remember, we can only have one person that's holding the bag at the end of the day and accountability on completing these projects. Only one person on the team. There's a name and a date and a measurable goal that's going to be looked at in the next quarterly meeting at your dealership. We're going to ask the senior leadership team, is this done? Did this get completed or not? Because it's extremely measurable. Now, company rocks or company projects, company quarterly targets are the most essential. In order for us to advance towards our 1-year plan, these 5, 6, 7 quarterly targets have to be done at the necessity of the company growth. So this is a little bit more advanced. In my experience, it takes a dealership and their senior leadership team a solid year to 18 months to even really understand how to set good quarterly goals and how to understand the difference between what are essential, necessary company targets versus personal targets. But you get better with practice. So do your best, set some rocks, set some targets for your company and for each person on your senior leadership team. As you continue to progress and your dealership really starts to understand your operating system, ultimately, it would be awesome for you to get to a point where you can disseminate and have everybody on the team, everybody in the dealership, all 10, or all 50 or all 100 or 400 employees, everybody would have at least one rock, one target this quarter that they're really driving towards to advance towards the top of that mountain, to get to the 1-year plan so you're on track to move towards your 10-year target. So these are quarterly targets. We're shooting for an 80% success rate each quarter. If we don't get to 80%, there's only 2 real reasons why. Either the person accountable for that rock or that quarterly goal didn't set an achievable, realistic expectation or rock or goal. It wasn't achievable. It wasn't realistic. It was too big. It was too not enough time. It was too lofty. Or they didn't carry the mail. And you know what? Open and honest, firm and fair. That's what we always say at my company in these meetings. Hey, I got to hold you to the carpet on this. Dealers ask me this question all the time. How do I hold people accountable? How do I keep my team accountable? You know, we come up with all these good ideas, but it seems like 2 weeks later, we've lost the notes and we forgot, and no one's really following up and following through. Well, you hold people accountable by, as the owner and as the senior leadership team, making it the main thing. You know, making it important. If everything is important, nothing's important. What's important? Well, this operating system is important. And so as the owner and moving it down through my senior leadership team, if I'm focused on having these agendas and having these targets and having these meetings and being religious about it, I'm modeling for my team that these are critical things. These aren't subjective things. Now, if somebody doesn't accomplish a rock, it doesn't mean you stand them in the corner for 30 minutes and time out. I mean, how do you hold people accountable? It becomes a bar. It becomes a culture that you as the leader said, this is important to me. This is where we're going. I'm going to have some rocks as the owner. Come hell or high water, I'm going to hit my rocks because I have to show you, I have to model to you that this is important. I think what you're going to see is a rising bar of A players at your team that are coming together with a focus on not being the only one at the table that didn't accomplish their goals. Scorecards are activities. What activities do we need to do over the next 1 year? These aren't quarterly. These are annual activities. And think about it like this. If we do these activities, if we nail these activities, we're going to hit the 1-year plan. We're absolutely going to crush it. And so what do these look like? Well, activities are measurable. So we have to objectively be able to measure scorecard activities. If you're an owner or you're a key manager and you're on a desert island and you opened up your iPad and you could only look at a 1-pager of KPIs of what your dealership was doing today, this month, this quarter, so on and so forth, then you would have a good pulse on your business if you were on track or off track to hit that 1-year plan. Remember, that 1-year plan is dated. Hopefully it's December 31st. How many cars you're going to sell this year, how much gross profit you're going to do, how much revenue you're going to do, what's the service department going to do. All of your numbers, your measurables are for that 1-year plan. And if we do these activities, we're going to nail it. What do these activities look like? Well, for the BDC, it could be how many phone calls we're going to make in a day, in a month, in a week, in a quarter, how many inbound, how many outbound, how many emails, what's our appointment rate? How many appointments are we going to set? How many appointments are going to show? What's the percentage? What's the numerical number? How many showroom visits is the BDC going to be held accountable for? How many showroom visits are the salespeople going to be accountable for in the sales department? How many demos are we going to do in the sales department? How many write-ups are we going to do in the sales department? You get the point. Just in the sales department and the BDC, these are activities that can be measured weekly, that if done, if we can hit these numbers, if we can get this many appointments, this many shows, this many showroom visits, this many demos, this many write-ups, we know we're going to get this many closes. If we hold this closing rate, then we're going to hit that 1-year plan. You can extrapolate that to the accounting department. You can, the accounting department can measure accounts receivables and things of that nature. You can move that to the service department. How many ROs do we need to write? What's our labor per RO need to be, or what's our average ticket size need to be? What's our mix between customer pay and internal and warranty work? Imagine desert island, KPIs, what do I need to know to be able to really reconcile if my business, if my dealership, or if you're not a dealership, you're a small business, what KPIs do we need to hit every week in order for us to be on track to hit the 1-year plan? Now, think about this. Not everybody on your senior leadership team necessarily is accountable for something on the scorecard. You might have a sales manager or a GSM on your senior leadership team that has 3 or 4 or 10 different items of activities on the scorecard, And then you might have a marketing person, for example, in your senior leadership team that has 2 or 3. Not everybody has to have the exact same amount of activities that are measured. It really comes down to, as the owner or as the integrator, as the GM, as the visionary of the owner or the dealer, what KPIs are going to make the difference? Remember, scorecard activities it's like brutal facts. And Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. But there's a chapter there that's called Brutal Facts. If I were a general in a war, I could only make good strategic war and battle decisions if I have all the facts. You give me bad facts, people are going to die. I mean, I'm going to make bad decisions. But if I have all the facts, whether they're good or bad, they're making an advancement over in the West, we're making an advancement in the East, that changes the battle plan. First, if we're making an advancement in the West and they're making an advancement in the East. And my point is, as the owner and the key leadership team, you need the brutal facts, what's really happening in your business and these KPIs, in order for you guys to make adjustments to be able to hit the 1-year plan. So the next bullet point is quarterly meetings. So quarterly meetings are best done offsite. I know it's a little bit of an investment, but to get your team and your key senior leaders out of the dealership, it's a ton of payroll. To get them out of the store, take them to a conference room, take them to a hotel meeting room, take them to a restaurant, but get them out of the store. Get them off their phones. Make a rule and say, hey, listen, we're going to take breaks together, because everything we're going to go over today in this quarterly meeting, we're going to be war gaming what we got to do in this next quarter in order for us to advance towards our 1-year plan. And to do that, everything that we're going to go over is important. Quarterly meetings are designed to do 2 things. Number 1, let's look back at the last quarter and say, hey, how did we do on our rocks, on our quarterly rocks? Did we pass or fail? Did we hit that 80% that we're shooting for in achievement, or were they unrealistic? Did we set good quarterly rocks last quarter, or did someone drop the ball? Did someone just not carry the mail? And look, that doesn't mean they're a bad person or they need to be terminated. Maybe they had a rough quarter. Maybe they need a little encouragement from the team. But we have to be open and honest, firm and fair. This is the circle of trust in this meeting. And by the way, I'm going to drop in the description an example of a quarterly agenda. And I want to hear from everybody what's not working at our dealership. And oh my gosh, the things that you will draft when you ask everybody on the team to write down what's not working at the dealership or at your small business. It's unbelievable the problems that you'll unpack from what's not working from last quarter. What are you trying to accomplish today in this offsite? We get a lot invested in today. What specifically, and you don't get a free hall pass on this, getting a pulse for where we're at, temperature from how we did last quarter. And then we're going to move into reviewing our production. Did we hit our quarterly goals or not? Did we hit that 80% achievement individually and corporately? Did we hit our company rocks at 80%? Why or why not? Is there anything we can learn that we can improve as we set quarterly targets today from last quarter on the ones that we didn't hit? And then we're going to move through that one day, and we're going to move into just doing a brief review of that 10-year target, that 3-year picture, that 1-year plan, our core values, our marketing uniques, just going through the operating system and checking in with the team. Hey, is there anything drastic that we need to change about our business that needs to be addressed today? And then we move right into setting the quarterly rocks for the next quarter. Listen, we're in Q2. We just finished Q1. We've reviewed Q1. Now we're moving into Q2. Where do we need to be at the end of June, 6 months, halfway through the year, to be on track to hit a 1-year plan? What quarterly targets do we need to set? How many units are we going to sell? What's our revenue going to be? Are we going to increase our revenue? I hope you are. Get your thinking up. What's our gross profit going to increase? And by how much? What do we need to do to advance towards that 1-year plan? If you started this year at 100 sales and your 1-year plan puts you at 150, and you went through the first quarter and got from 100 to 115, where do you need to be at the end of June to be on track for 150? I mean, that's the point. What do we got to do to continue to push and advance towards that 1-year plan? And then I'm going to move into problem-solving mode. Hey, we got the whole team here. We're out of the office. The cell phones are off. Hey, what problems do we have in our dealership? What problems do you have in your small business? How do we solve those problems? Let's spend time identifying some of the major obstacles for growth in our business. And how are we going to jump those obstacles? What are some real solutions? And I want to spend several hours inside this quarterly with my senior team removed from the day-to-day operation, really solving these big, hairy problems. What I found doing hundreds of these meetings or meetings like this is when you ask your team things like, what's not working in our dealership, what's not working in my small business, you're going to create a list. And I encourage you to write down all these things that are not working in your dealership and then come back to that at the end and say, hey, let's designate a couple of hours. Let's revisit these things and prioritize them of what's not working in our business. What's the number one thing that if we solve this problem today would really create more efficiency, more productivity, a happier team and culture? I want to end the last couple of hours with problem solving and not complaining about things that aren't working, but actually let's identify what's not working and let's solve that problem together collectively. So that's a quarterly meeting, evaluating the last quarter, setting targets for the next quarter to advance towards that 1-year plan. So the last pro tip I want to give you on running on an operating system is having a weekly check-in in-house. Okay, we're not leaving the dealership. We're going to have an in-house meeting for 90 minutes, but here's the kicker. And this is what I want you to think about. Committed to the same time and the same day each week. Now that's difficult. You've got multiple people, you got customers that are coming in, you got vacations that you're dealing with on your senior leadership team. But more importantly, me, I travel the country for a living. And so the idea that we were going to do a meeting every Friday from 9 to 10:30 for 90 minutes was a tough task. But I have to keep asking myself, if everything's important, nothing's important. This was important to me, to be able to model for my team as the owner, the leader. It's my responsibility to show the team that it's important for us to get together once a week, compare notes, figure out where we are weekly so we can go over a couple of things. It's always the same agenda. I'm going to drop another sample agenda for the weekly meeting down in the description. You can go down there, click on it, make it your own. This just works. It works for my business. It works in all the dealerships I put it in. It's the same agenda every week. It starts off with a check-in, good news. Go around the team with your senior leadership team. Hey, what's good news from this week? What happened to you either personally or in your business that was good? Let's get some energy going. Let's get some excitement going. What happened that was positive? Not everybody has to contribute every week. It doesn't really matter. But give me 2 or 3 people that had something great going on. Let's hear about it. Then we move into looking at our activities. Let's look at our activities and see if we hit our numbers last week or we didn't. And look, this isn't some long posit, some long consideration. This isn't a expanded review, an executive summary on everything going on in the department. Look, did we hit our numbers? And if we didn't hit our numbers, then do we need to move that to, a problem-solving activity later in the meeting? Do you need the help of the team to help you solve this problem? If you're not hitting your numbers, then look, it's not okay. We don't just let people not hit their numbers. What's the problem? Let's solve the problem. It's either you, and you can't do it because you're not capable, or you're not willing, or you're not able, or there's a problem in the business we need to help you solve. Or you may say, it was a bad week or a bad couple of weeks. I got this, check in with me next week, but you can start to feel the accountability building. Number 2, are we on track or off track or completed with our quarterly goals? So I'm going to go around, we're going to go through every quarterly goal we got each week. We're going to go through every single quarterly goal, the company goals that are emphasized of what we've got to do this quarter to hit our 1-year plan, and each senior leader's 3 to 7 quarterly goals. And remember, sometimes less is more. Are you on track to hit this goal? Are you off track? Or are you completed? I want the baby, not the labor pains. Don't give me some long expose on where you're at and this is why. It doesn't matter. On track, off track, completed. That's all I want to know. After that, we might do some company highlights. We do that in my business. It's a chance for me and each person on the senior leadership team to communicate what's new, what's fresh, what happened this week, what's transpiring. Let's overly communicate. Hey, in this department over here, we did X, Y, Z, and it's new. In this department over here, here's the latest update. John, what do you got in sales? So this is just a communication dump on the highlights of the business, what's going on. All this is accomplished in the first 30 minutes of a 90-minute meeting. We're literally going to hold the last 60 minutes of the meeting every week for problem solving. What is happening in the dealership that we need to put our minds together, identify the problem, discuss it, and then spend most of our time solving it. And look, it's not complaint session. We're going to identify the problem quickly. We're going to discuss the options that we have, and we're going to spend all of our time solving that problem. Now, me and my team, last week, I can tell you this, last week we were doing this at our weekly check-in. We spent the entire 60 minutes solving one problem, but it was a big problem. Lots of your senior leaders are going to have different opinions and different ideas. And as the leader, it's important for you to instill the culture of these meetings that, look, we may use your idea today and not tomorrow. Today, we may walk away with my idea, not yours. And we want constructive debate. We want to be able to fight for what we believe in as the fix for these problems. But at the end of the day, when as a team or as the visionary, as the owner, we make a decision of this is the way it's going to be, we're going to push away from the table and we're going to support each other. And we're going to say, hey, you know what? I got a chance to say my piece. I had the opportunity to come up with a fix. Now, the owner decided to go left instead of right, and I'm going to support him or her because I at least got a chance to throw out my best pitch on why I thought it should be right. And then last, at the end of each one of these meetings, at the end of each check-in weekly, at the end of each offsite one-day quarterly, and at the end of each two-day offsite annually, we each on the team rate on a scale of 1 to 10 the meeting. Now, we're not rating, my ability as the owner to facilitate. We're not rating the quality of the ideas. What we're rating is, did my peers show up and engage with each other at this meeting or not? Did they show up prepared? Did they contribute? Was one person talking the whole time, or was there a flood of ideas? Were people holding each other accountable? On a scale of 1 to 10, how prepared and engaged did the team show up? You as the owner, you have to model that this is important. And the way you do that is by showing up. You show up on time, ready to go every time. If you're not 5 minutes early, you're 10 minutes late. And model this for the team, and it's going to make tremendous, I promise you, it's going to change your dealership. So that's a lot. That's a lot to soak in. I've been doing this for over 4 years in my business and longer than that in dealerships. And listen, by the way, I've done this literally in hundreds of meetings in dealerships across the country. It's a lot to take in. Look, the idea of setting up quarterly targets just on its own, just that one thing, takes most of my clients that are dealers a year to 18 months. It took my team this long too, just to absorb, what does that mean? And then the idea of disseminating rocks down throughout the ranks of your organization accountability chart. I've been working with a dealer I was at 2 weeks ago in Arizona. We didn't even start doing that 2 years in now. But look, their growth is on fire. Every dealer that I'm working with, their growth is on fire by having these targeted forecasting growth plans that are surgical. I just want to encourage you to have a plan. If you fail to plan, you can plan to fail. If you plan to fail, just fail to plan. If you don't have a plan, you don't have a vision, we're going to that hill. That's the mountain we're going to, and we're going to stake a red flag in it. If you can't tell yourself and your team that, then God knows where you're headed and when you'll get there and where you'll end up. Listen, I have to share this with you. What's amazing to me is, when we set these 10-year targets with dealers, a lot of them are like, I don't know, Justin. I can't even see past a couple of years. And then they set these these audacious goals. And I'll give you an example. I can remember a dealer that was selling about actually wasn't even 100. He was selling 70 cars a month. And in 10 years, they set a goal to sell 200 cars a month. Now, as the consultant, as the facilitator in these projection meetings, it's difficult for me to say, hey, that's a terrible goal. But as we set the 3-year picture and we set the 1-year target, and as we set the quarterlies and we set the ScoreCards and we said, hey, what are we going to do to advance the measurables this quarter? What we found every single time, this happens to me every single time, is you realize that you can do a lot in a year. And you realize that you can get so close to that 10-year target in a year that you realize that your 10-year target's not big enough. You need to get your thinking up. Because as you reverse engineer back to this 10-year picture, you start to realize, gosh, we can accomplish much in 1, 2, 3 years. Maybe we didn't maybe we didn't pick the tallest mountain. Pick the tallest mountain, because you're going to realize as you reverse engineer this, getting to the top of that mountain is just one step at a time. And you'll be amazed as you start to build a team at how quickly you can cover that ground.